The NIU Huskies, 1360 WLBK.
1360 WLBK, welcome to the Dara show here on 1360 WLBK, presented by the DeKalb Area Rental Association, an organization of rental property owners and managers united to promote safe and quality housing, fair business practices, and the preservation of property rights. Three landlords are with us today to discuss current issues affecting rental housing in the DeKalb area. We have Will Heinisch of Heinisch Properties and Vice President of Dara. We also have Jim Mason of Mason Properties and Ombudsman of Dara, and Brad Rubik of College Housing Group and Information Director of Dara. Now, last week we talked about the proposed disorderly house ordinance. What is the current status, gentlemen? First of all, welcome back, gentlemen, and tell us what is the current status of that place.
Terry, I'll try and answer that question. The disorderly house, as we talked about last week, Kate was presented to the task force, and a red line version was presented from the city consultants. It had quite a few changes in it. We talked about it briefly, and we did have a tremendous response from listeners and other people that wanted more information and be able to look at it. You can go to our website now. We actually added a link. It's a red button that says Hot Topics. If you go to www.daranow.com, that's DARANOW.com, and click on Hot Topics, it's a red button. We have loaded onto our website these documents, the disorderly house document that's redlined that you can view, the 3 licensing and inspection ordinances, as well as landlord-tenant regulations. So currently, we talked about the disorderly house last week, and the status is this week that the consultants are going to meet with the task force to hammer out some of the red line wording.
And we'll define the term red line when you use that, please. What does that mean?
Well, task force, I think, was concerned, as well as a number of us were concerned, because if you looked at the original document, over 60% of it was what they called red line. That's where the city consultants went in and changed or clarified wording that was in the document. We're greatly concerned that we need to, and the consultants alluded that they would be willing to work with us to get some of that wording changed. One of the key changes was that we feel we need instant notification, whether you're a homeowner or a landlord. If you get written up for a disorderly house, as it's worded now, they have up to 10 days to just mail it by registered mail. And as landlords, we feel that it's important that we take instant notification to take care of the problem and help the city with their problems.
All right, very good. We have the communication skills to do that. Why not do that, right?
Yes.
And what about the city's recent redlining of the ordinance that had trouble you last week?
Well, we're for protecting the property rights of homeowners and landlords. We want to make sure that those rights are protected, and that when the red line document moves forward, that the wording is such that it's fair and balanced for not only the homeowners but also the landlords.
Terry, we believe we're going to reach an agreement on the terminology and with the attorneys this week. When that came out last week, we were definitely concerned about the amount of red line and what was going on with that, and thought that the basis of the ordinance was being changed. There's some small wording can really make a huge difference in what the ultimate enforcement of this ordinance and how it comes about. So,
well, I know, Brad, a lot of us, we kind of glaze over when you get into some of this legalese that we're talking about, but it has to be worded very carefully, doesn't it?
It really does. You got to think through every little aspect, and the task force has done a great job putting this together for us and really helped the city in getting it the way it wanted to. And then when we saw it come back with the changes, there was a lot of concern there. So, but the attorneys had mentioned at the task force meeting last week that there will be some flexibility, and we hope that we're going to sit down with them and get all those things worked out to get the original intent back in the ordinance.
Now, Brad, you met with them back on April 10th. Are you happy with the progress being made with the task force, or what are you guys' feelings on that?
We feel confident an agreement can be made at this point in time, and in regards to the disorderly house, the entire task force is opposed, though, to the licensing and inspection, and that kind of was brought up. It was previously indicated that this was not an avenue that the DeKalb City government was going to pursue. We really felt there was no conclusive data. Nothing was presented that actually supported consideration for licensing and inspection. So we have real concerns there. The disorderly house will address some of these issues. I believe that it should be monitored over a period of time before they take the next step in terms of pursuing each layer that goes into this. We think we're moving too fast with it. And what happened is we had a discussion. The city attorney said working with Mount Prospect in the past, and this is what we've emulated this kind of ordinance after, they took slow incremental steps. They phased the ordinance over time. They adjusted and they reviewed each step along the way. We feel like they're going way too fast with way too much real quick here. So we want to slow it down. We want to take each step as it goes and see where the progress is made.
All right, now I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Brad, one thing that I saw at the task force meeting was Brett Brown actually referenced a city data report that was done in 2010 that actually showed the total number of code enforcement quality of life issues to be higher at actually owner-occupied properties than the number of codes at landlords. So what that means was there was more actual code problems with owner-occupied properties than there were at landlord properties. Landlords, this is because of such high vacancy rate right now, up around 15%. It's become a very competitive business that we all compete against one another, and we have to offer a high-quality product, otherwise tenants just won't rent from us.
Oh, yeah, the competition is fierce out there right now. And now we know why your guys' feelings on licensing and inspection. What is the city? What is their motivation for pursuing a licensing and inspection as far as your gentlemen are concerned?
Yeah, this is Jim, license and inspection. The city manager told the city attorney that the reason for pursuing license and inspection and registration was due to absentee landlords, foreclosed and bank-owned property, and owners who have failed to properly maintain their property. The draft presented only addressed one of the three issues. Now, what it means here is that how do you get things orderly and how do you take care of things? And we feel that the license and inspection thing is not the way to go at this time. Terry?
All right, very good. And then what about do we possibly the homeowners? Could this be coming? If this comes, will it be kind of a snowball effect, and then the homeowners will have to have inspections?
Yeah, Terry, that could be a very slippery slope. Once the municipality gets their teeth into the owner-occupied, the rental property, then the owner-occupied would be next. So the people in this town have to make a decision. Do they want to be managed by the city hall, or can they do it themselves? Go ahead.
Okay, very good. And, of course, this day and age, and we talk to the mayor of DeKalb every month here on this radio program, and we know many cuts have had to be made. And so where is the funding? Where will the funding come to enforce these?
Well, there's a lot of different ways you could fund this. What Dara is representing is that the Dara is going to register the people for free the first year around to get the ball rolling, so the city doesn't have to hire anybody to do that. And what we're trying to do is say that we really don't think that there's much money involved in this situation if we can do it the old-fashioned way.
All right, very good. You're listening to the Dara radio program here on 1360 WLBK. In weeks in the future, we hope to take your phone calls at 748-1360, but we have so much information to convey to you on this show that we're going to have to put those phone calls off for at least a little while here. Now, what about the police? I understand that their ordinances will require valuable police time. And again, this is something we've addressed with the mayor before. We know they've had to make cuts in the time for the police, and especially overtime. Well, how will the police be involved with this?
The interesting thing about the police situation is over the last multiple of years, the police numbers have dropped. We're down 10 to 15 policemen, what we should have for the community at the present time. And it's kind of a hideous subtraction of workforce. The city has a covenant to take care of the homeowners and the property owners and what have you. And what has happened here is since there's not enough police on the street, we feel that some of these things that are happening in the community could be thwarted if we had more police. So our position is to reallocate the funds, hire more police, and a lot of these things would take care of themselves.
Now, do you hear from the police chief and other members of the police department on their feelings on this? Do you have an idea what their thoughts are?
In previous task force meetings, we've heard from the chief of police, who in fact recently retired. He was hesitant to answer the question initially in terms of how this is going to play out with him, but he just ultimately said that we'll just have to give it a try. And it just seemed kind of open-ended there, give it a try. In terms of, there are a lot of ways you can give it a try. And one of those ways could be to just step into the enforcement issue of the existing ordinance better. I think that could be addressed in a lot of ways. We feel like there are a lot of, even city code enforcement folks have mentioned in the past, they feel like the systems in place or the ordinance in places are effective if they are properly manned and the systems are efficient in pursuing those. I mean, there are a lot of steps along the way with this. The problem maybe being that the burden is more, and they really need more probably manpower to really enforce the existing ordinances or get a system in place that works better. The police obviously are extended already. The idea of them coming out and performing some of the functions that are required just in the licensing just takes away more of their time. And of course, I mean, the idea of pursuing inspection, security information, and checking the properties, it's a good idea, but for the police to go out and inspect every rental property in town and provide a report, that's a great deal of time.
A lot of paperwork involved there, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, we're talking to our friends from the Dara group. There are local landlords here that are talking about some of the proposals made by the housing task force here, and we're talking about enforcing some of these policies. But it sounds like some of the stuff you said there, Brad, that the ordinance your feelings are the ordinance are on the books now are equivalent, good enough, but they're just not being enforced enough.
Well, they've mentioned there's been a lot of talk about enforcement of the existing ordinance and the change in this drastic change in this policy that they're promoting. Whether it's going to be effective and to what extent. I mean, is it really going to be incrementally more effective, or is it just going to be the additional manpower and the fees that they pass on that gives them the ability to enforce them? So there's been a lot of question from a lot of quality people in regards to what's the difference? Is there going to be that much more quality enforcement with that? So we really feel like the license inspection, if the basic premise is these three items, absentee landlords, foreclosed properties, and homeowners, that even what they've presented is a very small percentage of the problem that they've addressed as being the top three issues. They're only addressing one of those three, and in addition to that, absentee landlords is only a small percentage of the property owners in town. I mean, in terms of the number of units they own.
Right.
So it just seems like a lot of layers to pursue what we feel like they could potentially. I don't have the answers. They may very well be able to. I don't have the answers without knowing and testing what we've got in place right now.
Okay.
I would say, Brad, shirt tail on that the need for increased inspections is a government perception and actually not a demonstrated need right now. There is no evidence that an increased layer of inspections will improve health and safety. As a matter of fact, tenants currently have a right to call for inspections of their premises any time of the year they wish. So if a tenant, there already is that vehicle in place that if a tenant feels that they're living in a dilapidated property, that they can call the code enforcement now. The problem is there's not enough code enforcement officers,
So as it stands right now, help us understand that, the listeners. Now, are all the apartments in DeKalb registered? Are they all?
No, they're not. I would say 70 or 80% of them are registered. But there's a lot of people that come to the community that don't really realize that they have to be registered. We're proposing that through the disorderly house ordinance, that if the police or the fire or some city official shows up at your doorstep, if you're not registered, we give you one pop at getting registered, and then there will be fines if you don't get registered in the future.
Okay, very good. And then now, what about as a property owner? Now, how will licensing affect property owners here in DeKalb?
Well,
or might affect, I should say.
Well, it will affect. It will affect. We'll jump forward here. According to what we see here, that there's many steps to get licensed. Residential operator's license, a license to rent a rental unit or rental structures as required by this article. If that happens, then the city manager and the city would control all the aspects of your rental business. Responsible parties would include the landlords designees, agents, residential operators, licensees, and property managers. Now, the way I see it right now, to get a license, there's about 4 things you have to do. The first thing would be a security certificate. A certificate issued to the property owner upon completion and review of a crime prevention analysis conducted by the police department, which includes, among other things, conducting a crime prevention through environmental design survey, whatever that means, and presentation of safety tips to the person to protect the property, its occupants, visitors, as well as other owners' implementation of any security recommendations within the reasonable period of time as determined by the director. That's number one. Number two, security survey, an analysis of the property and the local characteristics conducted by the police department to determine the vulnerability of the property's occupants and visitors to the criminal activity, and to make recommendations to reduce crime activity and promote safety based upon the observations. Now that's number two. So you're actually going to go then the last thing is, in number two, you'll have to take a crime prevention course. That would be your operatives, your licensees, or the people that work for you. Number three, then that would, you have to be registered. So once you get registered, it's name, rank, serial number, email, phone number, etc. Again, Dara is offering to do the registration to get this thing cleaned up, because I've got the registration list in my office and it doesn't have email. It's really not complete. So first responders could have what they need. Last thing would be licensing. Now the license we've talked about, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, could be revocable. They could take it away from you. In all mortgage documents and anywhere in the United States, if you lose your licensing, you're in default. So actually the city should never take away any registration or never take any license away if they really do it. Lastly, the proposal that we saw last week was, second proposal was 20% each year would be licensed, or they'd all be licensed, but you'd be inspected 20% of the inventory in the town every year. But you would have to pay every year for 5 years. So the way the proposal works is the city could maybe inspect 20% of the units. You would have to pay whatever the fee is for 4 more years, 5 years total, get inspected once. In Glendale Heights right now, I've been told owners pay $300 per inspection per year, or every time the property is turned over. The problem is that if you have an apartment house, you're lucky to make $1,000, maybe $300, $400, $500 a year net after expenses. So what we have here is a series of events that the property owners or the multifamily owners would have to deal with, and maybe the single-family owners down the road would have to deal with it also. Brad?
It's a huge financial burden, not only to the city but the property owners themselves. I mean, at some point you decide what you're wanting to invest your money in to make your property better, but now they're going to tell you what they have to do. And so the real concern is that a lot of people may not be able to comply. And what happens if they don't? And then we've got foreclosures. I mean, they can put liens on the properties. They can, vacate. They can close down properties. So now you've got more vacant properties. You've got foreclosures. You've got the legal system being burdened at the city government. You've got the cost potentially to demolish the units. So there's a lot of projections that may be missed in terms of the cost, not only to the city but to us. So now what are we going to do if we have? I mean, when the property or DeKalb expanded west of Annie Glidden years ago, we had a lot of properties that became vacant, that became issues, and those were the concerns. This potentially could create the same situation that we experienced then, just simply by requiring all these additional things. And where do you draw the line?
Now, Brad, is it different for properties on the campus? Is that different than the city, or is it all together?
Jim could probably better answer that, yeah.
It's really all together.
It is?
Yeah, it's all together. The university has its own rules and regulations, so they would not be part of this license and inspection thing. They do their own thing.
All right, very good. And I see you guys have a list here of arguments against licensing. And the first one jumps out at you is the cost. The cost of the city, landlords, tenants, and homeowners. So it sounds like everybody is going to have to absorb this cost.
Yes, increased cost to the city, tenants, and homeowners. Registration of personal freedoms will be exacerbated and defeated. Higher costs will lead to lower real estate values. No evidence that this will improve health and safety. Now, one reason that they're doing this is health and safety. If health and safety is so important and people aren't able to take care of their properties by themselves, what good is it to check them out every 60 months? We have a problem. If you're going to the dentist, you go to the dentist and you get your teeth taken care of more than every 60 months. You've got enforcement issues. You have conflict with the purpose of the landlord, the tenant handbook. We have a tenant handbook presently now that covers a lot of these issues. It's been in place for 3 to 5 years, and we think it's really great.
Now, where did that handbook come from? Was this a collaboration?
Yes, what we did was about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we got together. It was under Bessie Konopoulos' administration, and we put together a landlord-tenant handbook that is very innocuous, but it gives a lot of information. And Dara has got together with the task force, and we've updated it. It's going to be updated, and we're going to give it to the city.
Yeah, the handbook itself was brought about. The Student Legal Service got involved from Northern, and they really wanted to make sure and provide tenants with proper rights and an understanding of exactly how certain situations would work. In other words, hey, if I'm the landlord, I come to your door and I knock on it and say, I need to come in. You have the right to say no, that you're preoccupied right now, unless it's an emergency or real safety issue that's immediately needing to be addressed. A lot of the tenants really didn't recognize or understand their position. So the idea was to provide them with their knowledge and to provide them with additional privacy. And this really steps right back into taking away those privacies that they talked about.
Okay, and again, a lot of first-time renters, too, in this area, too. So that's also very important that they have that general knowledge.
Absolutely.
One of the big things here is lawsuits against the city, miscode violations leading to injury. In the city of Chicago, we had a porch fall, and a lot of people from DeKalb were on that porch.
Sure.
They got killed. Can you imagine if the city of DeKalb licenses and inspects these properties and then puts a certificate on the wall and somebody gets hurt, the city's going to be sued? The last thing the city wants to do is take over $900 million worth of liability, which is what this property is probably worth. And we just think that the insurance policy would be ridiculous on that. Go ahead, Terry.
All right, something that Will alluded to is that actually more complaints come from single-family homes, right, than from is that right, Will?
Yeah, it is. The study that they did, there's more code enforcement violations actually from owner-occupied than there is rental property. And I think the city here is going after a perceived perception and trying to tackle something that isn't an issue. If the whole community perceives that increased enforcement or increased code, the code enforcement people did talk to the task force, and the code we have in place, and if you go to the city's website, there's chapter after chapter after chapter of code violations. The problem is that code enforcement doesn't have enough people to go out and enforce all these rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. So really, if the community perceives that increased enforcement, if that's what we're really talking about, are code issues, the city, we have everything in place. We don't need licensing. We already have registration. We don't need inspections. We already have a code department. We need to figure out a way of how to fund those people that we need more police, more code, and use existing what we have on the books. We don't need to continue more and more rules and layers of ordinances.
Okay, very good. And you guys have cited a couple of different communities here today. Who's got it right in your mind? Who's got the right system down, or should we emulate that?
That's an interesting question. I spent a lot of time in the suburbs, and I've been down southern Illinois, and everywhere the license and inspection is in place, it's a lopsided situation. The city can't be the judge and executioner on these situations, and sometimes, but not often, people in the city can take advantage of a property owner if there becomes an issue and the property owner doesn't do what they want, called loading up. They load up on them, and there's a lot of people have been taken advantage of. So how does it work around the community? This community was been around since 1856 without license and inspection. and we think it should stay that way. So as far as the other communities, I've never heard a positive thing from the landlords. It's just from the city side. Go ahead.
I would say we are the city of DeKalb, and we are unique. I mean, we have some very thoughtful leaders and people in this community. Disorderly house that we've been talking about, this is something completely new that no other community has developed. This was grassroots from the mayor's own task force. This is something, as the police chief said, that this will work. Even the consultants said that this is very unique. There's no other community that is attempting to implement this kind of ordinance. So we are DeKalb. We don't need to copy any other community just because our neighbors have a licensing inspection and we can show that it doesn't work. Let's be unique. Let's be different. Let's put our own path for the future.
All right, very good. Well, this has been very interesting discussion here, too. And again, I know a lot more ground to cover here, but help us understand now, Brad, perhaps you can tell us. The Housing Task Force are these just suggestions they're making? In other words, these are not policies yet. And
no.
What is the process
well,
then?
it's a collaboration, and we appreciate the city asking some very reputable people in town to sit down and take their time to try to see what could really work for us. In regards to the disorderly house, no question about it. They worked very hard in getting an outline that made sense. And everybody's in agreement with that now. And like I say, it's just a matter of working out those details. So it's much appreciated, and we could step forward and continue to do and save the city time and money with attorney fees and things like that. They've already spent well over $30,000, maybe even close to $40,000 developing the draft that basically was also developed by the task force. So we kind of, worked them together and massaged it and such. But in regards to licensing and inspection, we wonder, do you want to continue to pay an attorney to present proposed ordinance plans and drafts and things like that if they haven't demonstrated the need? So, that's where the questions come in. We want to help. We're concerned about our city. We want to make sure that we're taking the right direction with things.
All right, very good. I know the bottom line with people these days, they don't want to hear about any more spending from the city or any form of government at all. And you guys are behind that as well.
Absolutely. Well, I imagine most of us are a little more conservative than some. But no question about it. You got to keep things under control. When you open up a new policy that really requires so much time, it can be an expensive thing to go through before you find out its effectiveness.
All right, very good. And if we want to learn more about the Dara Group, how do we do this? Well, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way, like I said, is go to our website, www.daranow.com. You can request information. We have links set up, hot topics. That's probably the quickest way for people to get information is go to that website and contact us, and we'll be in touch with you.
Okay, very good. And you want the feedback, right, Jim?
We want the feedback, and if the mayor would like to come on next week, we'd like to invite him to sit here and answer questions, and we'd like to take calls from the community. He is very interested in this. He's very interested in this, and we want to work with him 100%. So he's invited to be here next week. If he'd like to, we'll talk with him personally over the phone.
That's great. So it's not an adversarial thing, right, Jim? You're just invited. We're all trying to work together to make this the most economical way to do this, right?
Yes, it's been unbelievable. These three task force have done a great job, and the mayor and the city manager appointed these people. They've done a great job. We want to keep them in their seats as to finish up the program.
Well, this is the way democracy is supposed to work. It's great to see everybody playing nicely together. Again, we want to thank Will Heinisch, Jim Mason, and Brad Rubik for stopping by. And we'll be back again next week at this time. And again, taking phone calls and hopefully have the mayor of DeKalb with us as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
And that's the Dara Show here on 1360 WLBK.
NBC News Radio, I'm Derek Van. A blast of April heat for the eastern third of the nation today. NBC's Al Roker says 80 and even 90-degree readings will be widespread.
From Florida all the way to New England, we're talking about the potential of record-setting temperatures. Boston, where they're running the marathon, an 87-degree temperature, that could cause major